Every morning, their words cut deeper than any stone. The village of Rivona woke slowly with the sun, mist floating gently over the stone paths and wooden homes. For most people, morning meant warmth, chatter, and purpose. For Lyanna, it meant another walk to the well, and another quiet battle she had to face alone. She walked softly along the narrow path, a clay pot resting against her hip. Her steps were careful, her eyes lowered. Lyanna was known for her gentle beauty, soft brown eyes, calm hands, and a grace that never demanded attention. But in Rivona, beauty meant little if a woman had no child. As she neared the well, the murmurs began. Maris was already there, surrounded by her children and a small circle of women. She did not bother to lower her voice. "Look," Maris said loudly, her tone sharp and deliberate, pretty face, empty arms. Quiet laughter followed, cruel, knowing, cutting. The kind that did not need to be loud to hurt. Another woman added with a smirk, 5 years of marriage, and still nothing. Lyanna felt her chest tighten, but she did not stop. She focused on the sound of water, on the cold stone beneath her fingers. She reminded herself to breathe. She reminded herself not to cry. If I stay silent, maybe the pain will pass. Maris leaned closer, her voice dripping with mockery. "Tell me, Lyanna," she said, "what good is a woman who cannot give life?" Lyanna's hands trembled as she filled her pot. Was a woman's worth truly measured by the emptiness of her arms? She turned away without a word. She had learned long ago that defending herself only made the cruelty worse. Silence had become her shield, even though it cracked a little more each day. But the pain did not end at the well. When Lyanna reached home, old Mara was waiting. Her sharp eyes followed Lyanna's every movement. "You walk like someone carrying shame," old Mara said coldly. 5 years, Lyanna. 5 years, and still no child. Do you know what people say about this? Family. Lyanna lowered her head. "I have tried," she whispered. "Tried?" Old Mara scoffed. "Trying does not fill a cradle. Trying does not give my son a future." Each word felt heavier than the last, pressing down on Lyanna's heart. She wanted to speak. She wanted to explain. But she remained silent, swallowing the ache she knew too well. That night, when the house fell quiet and the world finally turned away from her, Lyanna sat alone with her pain, unseen, unheard, and unanswered. Backhand index pointing right. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments. He said I was enough, but could he truly save me? That evening, the small house in Rivona was quiet, filled only with the soft crackle of firewood and the distant sound of night settling over the village. Daryl sat beside Lyanna, watching her carefully, as if he could sense the weight pressing on her heart. "You are enough," he said gently, taking her hands into his own. His voice was calm, steady, filled with sincerity. "You have always been enough to me." Lyanna tried to smile. She truly did. But the words, though warm, struggled to reach the deepest corners of her soul. She nodded slowly, afraid that if she spoke, her voice might break. Daryl brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I did not marry you for children," he continued. "I married you for your kindness, your strength, your heart. A child will come when it is meant to come." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and saw nothing but love in his eyes. Love without conditions. Love without judgment. And for a moment, her heart softened. But love could not silence the voices of the village. When Daryl finally drifted into sleep, Lyanna remained awake. The room felt heavy, the shadows on the walls stretching like silent witnesses to her pain. She turned onto her side, pressing her face into the pillow so no one could hear her sobs. Why does love feel powerless against shame? Tears soaked the fabric beneath her cheek as her chest rose and fell in quiet desperation. She replayed the day's words over and over, Maris's laughter, the woman at the well, old Mora's cold stare. Each memory cut deeper than the last. She placed a trembling hand over her stomach, as if hoping to feel something, anything. But there was only emptiness. Only silence. Was she truly enough if everyone else treated her like she was nothing? Lyanna remembered the prayers she had whispered into the dark, the offering she had given, the hope she had carried year after year. Hope that now felt thin, fragile, and dangerously close to breaking. Outside, the moonlight spilled softly through the window, painting her face in silver. To the world, she was a married woman with a good husband and a quiet life. But inside, she was drowning in a pain no one seemed to notice. She wiped her tears quickly when she heard Daryl stir, forcing herself to breathe evenly. She did not want to burden him. He had already given her everything he could. And yet, alone in the dark, Lyanna allowed herself one final, silent wish, for relief, for peace, for a miracle that would quiet the storm inside her heart. I have nothing left, except the mountains and my tears. The evening air inside the house felt heavy, as if the walls themselves were listening. Lyanna stood near the doorway, her hands folded tightly in front of her, while old Mora's sharp eyes followed her every movement. You have taken my son's best years, old Mora said coldly, her voice cutting through the silence. 5 years, Lyanna. 5 long years, and still this house hears no child's cry. Lyanna lowered her head, her throat tightening. She tried to speak, but no words came. I have prayed, she whispered at last. I have tried everything. Old Mora scoffed, taking a step closer. Trying does not fill a cradle. Trying does not give this family a future. People laugh at us because of you. Each word felt like a blow to Lyanna's chest. Her fingers trembled, but she remained silent. She had learned that answering only fueled the storm. Then old Mora spoke the words Lyanna feared most. If nothing changes this year, she said slowly, deliberately, I will bring another wife for my son. A woman who can give him children. The room went still. Lyanna felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Another wife. Another woman. Someone better. Someone worthy. Am I truly so easy to replace? Before Lyanna could break, Daryl's chair scraped loudly against the floor. He stood up, his face flushed with anger. No, he said firmly. There will be no other wife. I love Lyanna. She is my wife, and that will not change. Old Mora turned sharply toward him. You speak from the heart, not from sense, she snapped. A family without children is a dead branch. Daryl stepped in front of Lyanna, shielding her with his presence. She is not a failure, he said. She is my family. For a moment, Lyanna felt safe behind him. Protected. Seen. But fear does not disappear so easily. Old Mora's eyes narrowed, her silence more frightening than her anger. She turned away without another word, leaving the threat hanging in the air like smoke. Dinner that night passed without taste or warmth. Lyanna barely touched her food. Her hands shook as she stared at her plate, her mind racing with thoughts she did not dare to voice. What if love is not enough to protect her? That night, while Daryl slept beside her, Lyanna lay awake staring into the darkness. His defense echoed in her mind, yet so did his mother's words. Hope and fear battled quietly inside her heart. She pressed her lips together to keep from crying, afraid that if she let the tears fall, they would never stop. Backhand index pointing right. And be honest, if you were in Lyanna's place, what choice would you make? I have nothing left, except the mountains and my tears. The clay pot slipped from Lyanna's hands and shattered against the stone floor, its sharp sound echoing through the house. Old Mora's voice followed immediately, harsh and unforgiving. Useless, she snapped. You cannot even carry water properly. How could you ever carry a child? That single sentence broke something inside Lyanna. She did not answer. She did not look back. Without shoes, without a shawl, she turned and ran. Her feet carried her past the familiar houses, past the fields where she had once dreamed of holding a child of her own. The village voices followed her, whispers, laughter, judgment, but she did not slow down. Tears blurred her vision as her breath came in sharp, uneven gasps. I cannot stay here. I cannot breathe here. Branches scratched her arms as she crossed into the forest. Thorns pulled at her skirt, but pain no longer mattered. Each step away from Ravona felt like survival. The deeper she ran, the quieter the world became, until the cruel voices faded into nothing but memory. The forest grew darker, older, as though time itself moved differently there. Tall trees closed around her, their shadows stretching like silent guardians. The air felt heavier, charged with something unseen. Lyanna slowed, her legs trembling, her heart pounding wildly in her chest. Was she running away, or running toward something she was meant to find? She stumbled forward until the trees opened into a wide, silent clearing. Before her rose Shadow Peak Ridge, its towering cliffs disappearing into mist. Stories about this place filled every child's nightmares. They said spirits walked here. They said people who entered never returned the same. Lyanna fell to her knees, her body finally giving in to exhaustion. Her sobs echoed softly against the stone walls of the mountains. I have nothing left, she whispered into the cold air. Nothing. The wind stirred gently, brushing past her tear-streaked face. The forest listened. The mountains stood still, as if waiting. Lyanna lifted her head slowly, her fear mixing with something else, determination. If the village had taken everything from her, then she had nothing left to lose. She rose unsteadily to her feet, wiping her tears with trembling hands. Though her heart raced, she took a step closer to the ridge, then another. Each step felt like crossing a line she could never return from. But for the first time in a long while, her pain did not feel meaningless. If Lyanna's pain touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real stories. Sometimes, help comes from the most unexpected places. Lyanna walked slowly along the narrow path that led out of the village, her heart heavy with 5 years of silence, ridicule, and unfulfilled longing. The morning mist clung to the grass, each step seeming to echo the weight she carried in her chest. She had nowhere to turn, nowhere to hide from the shame she had endured for so long. At the edge of the forest, just where the trees thinned and sunlight fell gently on the ground, she noticed a small, humble hut surrounded by neat rows of herbs. Smoke curled from a chimney, and the faint scent of dried flowers and medicinal leaves drifted on the air. Hesitating, Lyanna approached, unsure if she would be welcomed or scolded. From the doorway stepped a woman with kind, wise eyes and hair streaked with silver. She wore simple clothing, but her presence radiated calm. You look like someone who carries a heavy heart, the woman said softly. I am Amara. Come in. Tell me what troubles you. Lyanna's voice trembled as she spoke, pouring out years of silent suffering, the whispers of the villagers, the cruel laughter, the endless questions about why she had no child, and even the sharp words of old Mara that had carved themselves into her very soul. She spoke of Daryl's love, which comforted yet did not fully heal her, and of the loneliness that sometimes felt unbearable. Amara listened without interruption, her hands folded in quiet attention. Your heart has carried more than it should, she said finally. But strength can be found in care, patience, and gentle guidance. Healing begins when you allow someone to walk with you, not judge you. Lyanna felt a flicker of relief. For the first time in years, someone met her pain with understanding rather than criticism. Amara continued, explaining how the body, mind, and heart could all be nurtured together. She spoke of herbs, rest, and routines, not magic, not instant solutions, but slow, steady care that could build hope and restore balance. Hours passed, and Lyanna felt lighter with each word. The tension in her shoulders eased, the ache in her chest softened, and she realized that help was possible, even if she had spent years believing otherwise. She agreed to stay for a while, to learn and to heal under Amara's guidance, her heart trembling but open for the first time in so long. By the time she left the hut, the sun had climbed higher, casting warmth on her face. Though she did not yet know the path ahead, Lyanna took her first true step toward hope, knowing that perseverance and support could transform even the deepest wounds. Small steps can lead to the biggest changes. Under Amara's gentle guidance, Lyanna began a routine she had never imagined for herself. Each morning, she tended the small garden of herbs, learning their names and purposes, feeling the soil between her fingers. She drank warm teas brewed carefully by Amara, each sip carrying a quiet comfort she hadn't felt in years. Slowly, Lyanna noticed her body responding. The heaviness in her chest eased, and she began to sleep through the night without waking in a panic. Amara taught her simple breathing exercises, encouraging her to release the thoughts that clung to her like shadows. Day by day, Lyanna felt herself growing stronger, not just physically but emotionally. Daryl visited often, bringing small gifts or fresh food, always patient, never pressuring. He watched with pride as Lyanna stood taller, walked more confidently, and smiled more often. "You're learning to care for yourself," he said one morning, his eyes soft with admiration. "That's the bravest thing anyone can do." Even when villagers whispered as she walked past, their words no longer pierced her spirit. Lyanna had learned to carry a quiet armor of self-respect, reinforced by the care she was giving herself. The ache of 5 years of waiting remained, but it had softened, replaced by a cautious optimism that perhaps, one day, her dream would be realized. Amara reminded her that there were no instant solutions, only persistent effort and patience. "Faith in yourself is the first step," she said. "The rest will follow, in its own time." By evening, as Lyanna returned home, she felt a subtle but profound change. Hope was no longer a fragile ember, it was a quiet flame that refused to die. She realized that healing was a journey, not a miracle, and that every small, deliberate step was carrying her closer to the life she longed for. Love isn't just words, it's staying when it's hardest. Even as Lyanna began to heal, the world outside still weighed heavily on her. The villagers' whispers followed her through the streets, the judgmental glances of some lingering longer than necessary. Some days, the old doubts crept back into her mind, reminding her of the 5 long years she had endured. But Daryl remained steadfast. Every morning, he greeted her with a warm smile, helping her with daily chores, bringing her favorite fruits, and simply staying by her side. "You are not alone," he said one evening as they walked home from Amara's hut, the sun setting behind the hills. "Every step you take, I take with you." Lyanna felt her heart lighten in a way it hadn't in years. She realized that love was not only the sweet words or moments of joy, it was the quiet presence of someone willing to endure with her. Even when her heart ached, when the world seemed to push her down again, Daryl's constant support reminded her that she was enough. Amara's teachings, combined with Daryl's unwavering care, began to anchor Lyanna in a new reality. She learned to face gossip and judgment without shrinking, to smile even when the village eyes were heavy, and to trust that her worth was not defined by her ability to have a child, but by her courage and strength. At night, Lyanna would often sit by the window, holding Daryl's hand and watching the stars. "I don't feel so small anymore," she whispered. "I feel like maybe I can face what's ahead." Daryl squeezed her hand gently. "And I will be with you through it all." Through this steadfast love, Lyanna discovered a resilience she had never known. It was not the absence of struggle, but the presence of support that allowed her to breathe deeply again, to dream quietly, and to take the next steps toward hope. True love strengthens even the most burdened hearts. Backhand index pointing right. This is not just a story, it's a feeling. Persistence and care can bring life where there was doubt. Months passed, and Lyanna's life began to change in subtle but profound ways. Her body, strengthened by Amara's guidance, responded to the care she had given it. Her heart, fortified by Daryl's unwavering love, began to feel lighter with each passing day. One morning, as she prepared tea in the quiet of her home, a flutter of hope danced in her chest. She had taken a test, uncertain and nervous, but the moment she saw the 2 lines, tears welled in her eyes. After years of longing and struggle, she was finally pregnant. Daryl rushed in at her call, his eyes widening in disbelief and joy. He held her gently, as if afraid the moment might vanish. "Lyanna, is it really happening?" he whispered. Lyanna nodded through tears, her lips trembling in a smile. "It is, finally, after all these years." The joy was tempered with the memory of past struggles, the years of ridicule, the sharp words of old Amara, and the cruel whispers of villagers. Yet, standing in the small, quiet kitchen, Lyanna realized that perseverance, care, and love had carried her here. The dream she had held for so long was no longer a distant hope, it was becoming real. Amara's presence, though silent at that moment, had been a steady force in this transformation. Her patient guidance, her insistence on small daily acts of care, and her unwavering belief in Lyanna had helped turn years of despair into this moment of triumph. Lyanna looked out the window at the village, imagining the curious eyes that would eventually notice her change. But today, there was no fear, no shame, only relief, joy, and gratitude. She whispered a quiet prayer, not for perfection, not for magic, but for the strength to nurture the life growing inside her and to continue walking the path she had begun with courage. It takes humility to embrace the ones you once judged. Lyanna stood in her small garden, the soft morning sun spilling over the flowers she had nurtured through months of hope and care. The life growing within her was a quiet miracle, the first real proof that perseverance, love, and support could triumph over years of pain. Her hands rested on her belly, trembling slightly, and a tear slid down her cheek, not of sorrow, but of relief and gratitude. Daryl approached, his face alight with a joy that mirrored her own. He gently took her hands in his. "Lyanna, look at what we've endured," he said softly. "After everything, you've made this happen." Her lips curved into a tentative smile, feeling the warmth of love that had never wavered, even through the darkest days. From the edge of the garden, she noticed old Amara standing quietly, her usual stern expression softened, eyes glistening with emotion. The words she had spoken so many times over 5 years, harsh reminders and demands, had finally been replaced by something different. Amara stepped forward slowly, each step heavy with humility. "Lyanna, I was wrong. I let my fear and pride hurt you, and I see now the strength and patience you have shown," she whispered. Lyanna felt a surge of complex emotion, relief, joy, and forgiveness intertwining. Without hesitation, she embraced her mother-in-law, holding her close. Mara's tears fell freely, mingling with Lyanna's, a quiet acknowledgement of past mistakes and the healing of old wounds. The villagers, who had once watched with judgmental eyes, had gathered quietly, curious and apprehensive. Now, they watched with newfound respect as the woman they had mocked for years glowed with quiet confidence and the peace of someone who had endured. Daryl smiled at them, proud of Lyanna and the journey she had taken. In that moment, Lyanna felt a sense of completeness. The weight of ridicule, of harsh words, of endless waiting, had not disappeared, but it had been transformed into resilience and hope. She looked down at her belly and whispered softly, "We endured, and now we thrive." Old Amara held her hand, smiling through tears. "You've taught me the meaning of patience, courage, and love," she said. Lyanna nodded, feeling the power of forgiveness and understanding filled the space between them. The day stretched on, filled with quiet joy, gentle laughter, and the soft hope of new beginnings. Lyanna knew that the road ahead would have challenges, but she also knew she would never face them alone. With Daryl's love, her own strength, and the humility and support of those around her, she had built a life that had once seemed impossible. Sometimes, the greatest victories are not instant or magical, they are earned through love, perseverance, and the courage to forgive. Lyanna's journey reminds us that enduring hope and unwavering support can transform even the heaviest hearts. Backhand index pointing right. This is not just a story, it's a feeling. Backhand index pointing right. If Lyanna's silence spoke to your heart, support Glow Narrative by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Backhand index pointing right. Tell us, if you were standing in Lyanna's place, would you stay strong or choose a different path? Lyanna stood quietly in her small garden as the morning light settled over the flowers she had nurtured with patience and care. Her hands rested gently on her belly, and tears filled her eyes, not from pain this time, but from gratitude. For 5 long years, people had asked her the same question. Why don't you have a child yet? 5 years of whispers. 5 years of judgment. 5 years of silent endurance. And yet, here she stood, not broken, not defeated, but stronger than ever. Daryl stepped beside her and took her hand, just as he had done on every difficult day. We've been through everything, he said softly. And you never gave up. Then old Amara moved forward, the same woman whose words had once hurt the deepest. Today, there was no anger in her eyes, only humility. I was wrong, Lyanna, she said, her voice trembling. I mistook your patience for weakness, when it was your greatest strength. Lyanna didn't respond with anger or reminders of the past. She simply stepped forward and embraced her. In that moment, it wasn't just forgiveness, it was healing. The villagers watched in silence. The woman they once mocked now stood with quiet dignity. They realized that some battles are not won with loud victories, but with silent resilience. Lyanna looked down at her belly and whispered. This is not just the story of becoming a mother. This is the story of finding my worth. Sometimes, life doesn't give us miracles right away. So it can first teach us patience, love, and the courage to keep believing. Backhand index pointing right. If you were in Lyanna's place, would you still hold on to hope after 5 years of pain and judgment? Speech balloon. Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story touched your heart, please give it a like. Because stories like this aren't just watched, they're felt.